The dog in the courtroom. It was supposed to be just another quiet morning in the courthouse. The sunlight filtered through the high windows, painting long golden stripes across the polished floor. A small group of journalists waited in silence, their cameras lowered, but ready. No one really knew what to expect, only that Keanu Reeves was set to testify in a strange case that had caught everyone's attention. Not because of the legal matter itself, but because he insisted on bringing his dog. They thought it was a joke. A Hollywood star with a trained German shepherd. Maybe it was for emotional support. Maybe it was a publicity stunt. But as soon as Keanu walked in, wearing a plain gray suit and gently holding his dog's leash, the room shifted. Something about the way he moved, calm, focused, respectful, made even the most skeptical observers sit up straighter. The bailiff frowned and stepped forward to protest, but the judge raised a hand. "Let him in," she said quietly. She'd read the letter Keanu submitted to the court in advance. It was short, humble, respectful, but it carried weight. The kind of weight only a man with a lifetime of scars and quiet strength could put into simple words. As Keanu took his seat at the witness table, the dog sat beside him, not barking, not fidgeting, just watching everything with eyes that seemed to understand more than they should. It was unusual, unsettling even, but not in a bad way. The kind of unsettling that makes people wonder if they've just stepped into a deeper story than they're ready for. The prosecutor started speaking. Voice firm, tone polished. He pointed fingers. He described the case in cold logic. A neighbor's property vandalized. Security footage showing a figure near the scene. Reports of threats, arguments. And somehow, Keanu was dragged into it. Not because he had done anything wrong, but because he tried to protect someone who had. The defense lawyer stayed quiet. She had asked Keanu to speak for himself, not just for her client, but for the truth. Keanu nodded once, looked at the judge, and began. His voice was calm, clear, but there was something underneath it, something heavy. He spoke of a young woman named Grace, who lived 2 houses down from him. She had a small dog and worked 2 jobs. She smiled when she saw him but never asked for anything. One night, he found her sitting on her porch, crying, silently, face bruised, holding her dog like it was the only thing left in her life. Keanu didn't ask many questions. He didn't need to. He brought her water. He brought her food. He gave her his number and told her to call if she ever felt unsafe again. And a few nights later she did. "I heard a crash," he said to the courtroom. "My dog heard it first. She was barking, pulling at the door. I didn't think. I just ran." The courtroom listened, caught in the soft urgency of his words. No drama, no ego. Just a man who saw someone in danger and did what he thought was right. He didn't break into anyone's house. He didn't throw punches. He stood between a man and a woman who was terrified of him and waited until the police arrived. But the man, Grace's ex-boyfriend, turned the story around. He claimed Keanu had threatened him, claimed he was just picking up his things, claimed the dog had attacked him. The case was messy. The truth was twisted. And now Keanu was under oath, trying to untangle it all. Then came the moment no one expected. The prosecutor asked about the dog, said there were no medical records of aggression. Questioned why the dog was even there. "Does the dog serve a purpose in this courtroom?" he asked, voice sharp. Keanu looked down at his dog, then back up at the judge. "Yes," he said. She remembers. People shifted in their seats. The prosecutor scoffed. "Are you suggesting the dog can testify?" "No," Keanu said quietly. "But she was there. And she understands more than you think." The judge raised an eyebrow. "Mr. Reeves, are you prepared to demonstrate something to this court?" Keanu didn't blink. "Yes, Your Honor." Then he turned to his dog. No words. Just a small hand. Signal. Simple. Precise. The dog stood. Another signal. The dog walked forward to the center of the courtroom, then sat facing the back, eyes fixed on the gallery door. A murmur ran through the crowd. Keanu gave a third signal. The dog growled low, just once, deep and slow, her gaze still locked on the door. The bailiff stood halfway, uncertain. The judge leaned forward. "What is she doing, Mr. Reeves?" "She remembers the man who hurt Grace," Keanu said. "She remembers his scent, his voice, the way he walked, and she knows he's here." The door creaked, all heads turned, and that's when everything changed. A man in the back row, silent all this time, stood up and bolted for the side exit. The dog barked once. Keanu didn't move. But his voice cut through the noise. "That's him!" The bailiff ran. The courtroom erupted. And the judge? She stood slowly, eyes wide, the gavel forgotten in her hand. Because sometimes truth doesn't come through documents or witnesses. Sometimes it walks into the room on four legs, sits quietly, and waits for the signal. And when it comes, it changes everything. As the man is tackled outside the courtroom, Keanu's calm mask begins to slip. Someone in the crowd snaps a photo, and within hours, it spreads across the internet. Not because of the man, not because of the dog, but because of what's written in Keanu's eyes, a quiet fear that this was never about one man, and that the real danger might still be watching. Behind the photo, something darker. The photo exploded online before noon. At first, it was just a single image posted by a courtroom intern, a blurry frame that showed Keanu standing still while everyone else was in motion. The judge had half risen from her chair. The bailiff was mid-run. People in the back row were twisting to look at the man sprinting for the exit. And there, in the middle of it all, stood Keanu and his dog, silent, steady, focused. The caption beneath the photo was simple. He didn't even blink. By the time Keanu left the courtroom and stepped outside into the pale morning light, his phone was buzzing. Reporters were already waiting, microphones stretched like arms toward his face. A few even crouched down to get a shot of the dog, who walked calmly by his side, unbothered by the chaos. Keanu said nothing. He just kept walking, eyes straight ahead, like he knew the noise was only just beginning. Inside the courthouse, the man who ran was in custody. His fingerprints matched the ones found on Grace's broken window. But the real surprise came when officers opened the trunk of his car, parked just a block away. Inside were photos, hundreds of them. Some were of Grace, some were of her apartment, and some were of Keanu. Those were the ones that made the detectives stop talking. They showed Keanu in his garden, Keanu at the store, Keanu walking his dog. In the early morning, unaware. There were dates on the backs, times, notes in small block letters. And next to one photo, a shot of Keanu carrying groceries, there was a handwritten message. The dog knows. Too much. Detective Rojas, who had been on the force for over 2 decades, had to sit down. "This isn't just about Grace anymore," she muttered. He's been watching both of them. Word reached Keanu by early afternoon. He sat on the edge of a park bench, dog curled beside him, when Detective Rojas approached with the folder. She didn't speak at first, just handed it to him gently. Keanu opened it, looked through every photo, not quickly, not with panic, but slowly, like someone reading the end of a story he already suspected. And when he reached the last one, the one with the handwritten note, he closed the folder and let out a breath that had been waiting for years. "I knew something was wrong," he said softly. "But I thought maybe it was just me." Detective Rojas looked at him, unsure. "Do you know this man?" "Not by name," Keanu answered. "But I've seen him, always in the corner, never close. Sometimes across the street when I'm out with my dog. I thought maybe he was just another face. But the way my dog reacted, I should have trusted her earlier." The detective sat beside him, her voice low. "This isn't the first time he's done this. There's a pattern now. Other women, same type of stalking behavior. But you, he watched you too. That's new, that's different. Keanu stared at the trees in the park as the wind moved the leaves gently, casting flickers of shadow across the bench. He saw me help Grace. Maybe he thought I would get in the way. Maybe he wanted to see what I'd do. Maybe it was a game. And the dog? Keanu looked down. She's the reason Grace is still alive. She sensed it before any of us did. She hears things, smells things, reacts before I do. The detective hesitated. What was that signal you gave her in court? It looked rehearsed. Keanu gave a small smile. We've trained together for years. Not professionally. Just trust. She can read my body before I even move. Then he added quietly, "It saved my life once." That caught the detective's attention. What do you mean? Keanu's gaze shifted to the horizon, his voice growing distant. Years ago, before all this, I was on a film shoot overseas. We were staying at this isolated hotel. Something didn't feel right. My dog, she wouldn't eat, wouldn't sleep, kept pacing near the door. One night, she barked once, low, like she did today. And when I opened the door, there was a man, in the hallway, holding a knife. Rojas's eyes widened. He didn't expect me to be ready. He didn't expect her either. She chased him before he could get to the stairs. Police never found him, but I never forgot the way she looked at me that night. Like she knew. A pause hung in the air, heavy with truth. So when she growled in that courtroom, Keanu whispered, I didn't question it. As they sat there, the park slowly began to fill with quiet whispers. People had noticed Keanu. A few stepped closer. Some took photos. One child asked, "Is that the hero dog from the trial?" Keanu didn't respond, but the dog stood again, alert. Her nose twitched, ears perked, and suddenly she barked. Once. Not at the crowd. Not at the trees, but at a car parked on the far side of the road, a black sedan with tinted windows. Engine running, Detective Rojas stood. Stay here. But Keanu was already moving. Not fast, not reckless. Just walking toward the vehicle, his dog by his side, eyes locked on the windshield. The sedan didn't drive off. It stayed still, waiting. Rojas spoke into her radio. Backup was coming. As Keanu stepped closer, the driver's window lowered, and what he saw inside made his blood run cold. It wasn't the man from the trial. It was someone else. A woman. Older. Calm. Eyes sharp and cold. You're not part of this, she said. You just made yourself a problem. Then she smiled and drove away. Detective Rojas orders a search on the vehicle, but no license plate matches, and the camera footage goes dark minutes after the car leaves. Keanu returns home, but that night, someone leaves a sealed envelope on his doorstep. Inside, there's a photo of his dog, sleeping in his bed, taken from inside the house. The envelope on the doorstep that night. The silence in Keanu's home didn't feel peaceful. It felt like something was waiting to move. Outside, the air was still. The city lights blinked in the distance, calm and unaware. But inside his home, beneath the surface of every wall and shadow, was a quiet tension, the kind only those who had lived through fear could recognize. Keanu sat on the edge of his bed, one hand resting gently on the dog curled at his feet. Her breathing was slow, but her ears flicked every few seconds, catching sounds he couldn't hear. He didn't sleep. His eyes stayed on the hallway door, slightly ajar, just enough to watch the front entry if anything moved. Time dragged. The digital clock on the wall shifted numbers like it was mocking him. At 3:17 a.m., the dog suddenly lifted her head. No bark, no growl, just alert. Keanu stood quietly and followed her to the door. Nothing was broken, nothing forced. Just a soft scratching sound that had already stopped by the time they arrived. He opened the door slowly, hand behind his back, just in case. The street was empty. No footsteps, no engines, not even wind. But there it was, a plain white envelope on his welcome mat. No name, no markings, just one heavy crease in the center, like it had been handled with gloved fingers. Keanu picked it up and turned it over. Nothing. He opened it on the hallway floor, beneath the bright ceiling light. His chest tightened. Inside was a single photo. Glossy. New. It showed his bedroom, the exact moment his dog had finally fallen asleep earlier that evening. The angle was high, like from the closet shelf. The sheets were visible. His arm was half in frame. But most of all, the dog, curled beside him, unaware, was captured. In perfect detail. Keanu didn't move. He didn't speak. He just stared, and his mind, calm and trained from years of discipline, began sorting facts. Whoever had left the envelope had been inside his house. Not yesterday. Not last week. Tonight. While he was still awake. He reached slowly for his phone and called Detective Rojas. She answered immediately, her voice sharp with fatigue and alertness. "It's me," he said. "Someone was inside the house, and they left a message." Within 20 minutes, her team arrived. Silent, efficient, cautious. They dusted the doorframe, checked every window, scanned for signs of tampering, but there was nothing, no fingerprints, no forced locks. Not even a footprint outside, but the photo told a different story. "This was taken from inside the room," Rojas said, holding the image under a magnifier. "Angles too clean, too close. They were here." Keanu nodded. "And not just to scare me." Rojas glanced at him. "What do you mean?" "They didn't hurt the dog," he said quietly. "Didn't try to harm me. They wanted me to know they could. That's worse." The detective's face darkened. "This is no longer just a harassment case. We're dealing with someone organized, experienced. This isn't about revenge. It's about control." Keanu stood in the corner, his eyes following the dog's silent path as she sniffed every edge of the living room. "She's looking for the scent. She knows someone was here." Rojas walked to him and lowered her voice. "Keanu, this might go deeper than you think. We've run the license plate on that sedan. It doesn't exist. And our street cam footage cuts out the moment she left your block. Clean wipe. No trace." He nodded. "I figured. And there's something else," she continued. "Grace's ex-boyfriend, the one you helped protect her from. He hasn't spoken since being arrested, but he's terrified. Not of jail, of someone else." Keanu turned sharply. "What did he say?" "Just one word. When we showed him a picture of the woman in the car, he whispered it. Oracle. Then refused to say anything more." Keanu frowned. "Oracle? We've got no records, no files, nothing in the system. But in the past year, 3 similar stalking cases were dropped. Victims went missing. Evidence vanished. And now you're in it." Keanu looked out the window. The city hadn't changed. The sky was still black, but the weight in his chest had deepened. "They're trying to make me back off," he said. Rojas narrowed her eyes. "And will you?" He didn't answer, but the silence said enough. The next morning, the news broke again. This time about the photo. No names were leaked, but someone close to the investigation had shared a detail. That Keanu Reeves had been targeted inside his own home. That someone had gotten close enough to photograph him without being seen. Social media exploded again, not with rumors, but with concern. People began posting messages of support. Artists made sketches of the dog with captions like "Guardian of the Silent Nights." Hashtags like "Keanu Trust the Dog" and "Stand with Keanu" began trending globally. But the attention made things worse. Within hours, Rojas received a coded message on her personal device. It wasn't traced, wasn't hacked. It was hand-delivered, embedded in a printed newspaper left outside her car window. The message was made of letters cut from magazines, like something from an old thriller movie. "He needs to stop. Or the dog disappears next." Rojas called Keanu immediately. Her voice was tight. "We need to move you." But Keanu was already ahead of her. He had packed a single bag, loaded his dog into the back seat of an unmarked vehicle, and left the city. Not to hide. To find someone. Someone he hadn't spoken to in 5 years. A man who once served in covert ops and owed Keanu his life. He was the only one Keanu trusted now, and as Keanu drove through the winding mountain roads, his fingers tightened on the wheel. Because this wasn't just about defense anymore. It was about getting ahead of whoever thought they could control him with fear. When Keanu finally reaches the mountain cabin, the man he's looking for is already waiting outside, armed, serious, and looking older than Keanu remembered. He doesn't speak, just hands Keanu a tablet with a paused surveillance feed. On the screen is a live view of Keanu's house and a shadowy figure slipping inside again. The man in the cabin, the road turned from pavement to gravel just as the morning mist began crawling between the trees. Tall pines lined both sides like silent sentinels, and the farther Keanu drove, the quieter the world became. It was the kind of silence that didn't invite peace. It demanded attention. Every crunch of gravel under the tires, every sway of the tall branches above, felt like a warning. He hadn't been to this place in over 5 years, but nothing about it felt unfamiliar. The cabin came into view near the edge of a cliff that overlooked the forest valley. It was sturdy, hidden, built by a man who never wanted to be found. Smoke curled lazily from the chimney. The windows were dark, but Keanu knew better than to assume no one was watching. As he parked the car, his dog stirred in the back seat, ears twitching, head low. He opened the door slowly and let her out. She stayed close to his side, body tense, steps cautious. He didn't need to knock. The door opened before he reached it. The man standing there looked almost exactly the same. Gray had crept into his beard. His eyes were harder, his shoulders heavier. But the way he stood, still calculating, hadn't changed. His name was Dominic Shaw, once a military specialist, then something deeper. Black files, no records. The kind of man governments forgot on purpose. He didn't smile. He didn't greet Keanu. Instead, he handed him a tablet with a frozen video. "Still, you were right," he said, voice low and direct. Keanu took the tablet. The image showed his house, from above. A rooftop camera he never installed, and in the lower corner of the frame, a figure cloaked in black, crouched near the back window. "They came back," Dominic continued. "Same night you left. Someone's been monitoring the place for weeks, and not with basic tech. This is high level. Encrypted frequencies. Masked drones. Untraceable." Keanu stared at the screen, his knuckles tightening. "They were inside," he said flatly. "More than once." Dominic nodded. "You're not dealing with a stalker anymore. This is something structured, funded. Someone wants you to feel surrounded." Keanu looked up. "Oracle?" Dominic's eyes narrowed. "You heard that name?" One of them whispered it. "Before." He went silent. Dominic turned and walked deeper into the cabin. "Then we've got a problem." The inside of the cabin was part living space, part operations bunker. Maps covered the walls. Monitors hummed with live feeds. Coded files lay across the wooden table, half opened and marked in red ink. This wasn't a home. It was a watchtower. Keanu followed, setting down his bag. His dog laid beside the fireplace, still alert, eyes tracking every flicker of movement. "Oracle isn't a name," Dominic said, tapping on one of the screens. "It's a program, an off-grid network. Think shadow market meets private surveillance empire. Used to be a government ghost asset. But they cut ties when things went sideways. Rumor is a faction within it broke off and went rogue. Now it works for whoever pays the most. But they don't just gather intel. They manipulate it," Keanu guessed. "Exactly. Frame people, erase digital footprints, plant evidence, control narratives before the truth even breathes. And if someone resists, Dominic paused. They disappear. Keanu sank into a chair. Why come after me? Dominic walked to a shelf and pulled out a folder labeled with a single word, Grace. Because of her, he said. She's not just some innocent victim, not just a woman you helped. There's something deeper. This photo of her with the bruises. Taken by a reporter months ago. The reporter vanished before the article was published. Keanu took the folder. Inside were records, grainy surveillance captures of Grace entering a government building late at night. Documents marked confidential. And one picture that froze his breath. Grace standing beside the woman from the black sedan. Both smiling. She knows Oracle, Keanu whispered. Or she worked for them, Dominic said. Until something went wrong. Keanu leaned back. The pieces were shifting, fast and dangerous. The woman he thought he'd protected might not be who he thought she was. She looked scared when I found her, he murmured. Bruised, broken, hiding. Or pretending, Dominic said. People run from ghosts for two reasons. They're either being hunted, or they've stolen something valuable. Keanu stood, the weight of it settling in his chest. And now they're cleaning house. Dominic nodded. And they think you're in the way. Outside, a branch snapped. Both men turned. Within seconds, Dominic had cut the power. Screens went dark. Only the fire glowed faintly in the corner. His hand reached under the table and pulled out a short-barreled rifle. Keanu stepped to the window. The dog stood beside him, low and tense. She growled, just once, like she had in the courtroom. Then came a knock. Not fast, not loud. A single, slow knock. Dominic raised his weapon, eyes signaling Keanu to move to cover. Keanu didn't. He walked to the door, paused, and spoke softly. Who's there? A voice answered, female, soft, strained. Grace. Dominic raised an eyebrow. You? Sure, no, Keanu whispered. Then opened the door, and there she was, soaked from rain, shivering. Eyes wide with something that wasn't just fear, but guilt. She stepped inside slowly, dripping water on the floor. Her voice cracked. I didn't know where else to go. They're everywhere. They want to erase me. Why? Keanu asked. Who are they, really? Grace looked at him with red, tired eyes. Oracle doesn't just spy. They build identities. They erase others. They built mine, and now they want it back. Grace reveals she escaped with something dangerous, an encrypted device with the names of former agents, including the woman in the black sedan. She hid it in a place only Keanu can access. But before they can move, Dominic gets a silent alert. Someone has breached the cabin's perimeter. Not one person, 3. And they're already inside. 3 shadows inside. Grace's words hung in the room like smoke, curling into every corner of the cabin, leaving behind a bitter taste of truth. The fire crackled once, then went still, its warmth swallowed by the sudden cold inside. Keanu didn't speak right away. He watched her closely, watched the way her hands trembled, not from fear, but from the weight of holding onto a secret too long. She pulled something from her soaked jacket, a small black cube, no larger than a matchbox. Smooth, metallic, sealed tight with no visible seams. Even the dog stepped back, ears flattening, tail low. They call it the key, Grace whispered. It's not just a list, it's a kill switch. If this device connects to the wrong terminal, everything gets wiped. Identities, locations, operations. Everyone vanishes. But if it connects to the right system, it reveals everything they've tried to hide. Dominic took a cautious step forward, eyes locked on the cube. How long have they been chasing you? Since the night I walked away, she said. They let me believe I had a choice, that I could leave clean. I was stupid. I didn't understand what I was carrying. Until I saw the list. Keanu leaned in. And why come to me? Because you're not on the list, Grace said, eyes glistening. You're not part of any network. You live outside their system. And because when you found me on that porch, you didn't ask questions. You gave me water, food, space. I didn't deserve any of it, but you gave it anyway. Keanu looked at the device. Where's the system it connects to? In a bunker, she said. The one you once helped build, deep in the desert, off-grid, forgotten, only you know. How to open it? You designed the fallback passcode. Before Keanu could respond, Dominic's wrist buzzed once, silent, urgent. He glanced at the device, then slowly turned to the wall and tapped a panel. A thin screen slid out, showing a thermal map of the cabin. 3 red signatures, already inside. No sound. No warning. No broken windows. They had slipped in like vapor. Dominic's face hardened. Back room. Now. Keanu grabbed Grace's hand and pulled her toward the narrow hallway. The dog darted ahead, then stopped at the threshold of the back. Room, tail, rigid. As they entered, Dominic stayed behind, quietly locking the hallway door behind them. The back room was tight, windowless, a panic chamber disguised as storage, lined with soundproof insulation and stocked with basic supplies. It wasn't meant for comfort, only survival. Grace clutched the device to her chest, her breathing shallow. We can't stay. They won't. Stop! Keanu pressed a finger to his lips, listening. The dog growled low, barely audible, but Keanu knew that growl. It wasn't anger. It was warning. From the main room, footsteps crept across the floor. Slow, deliberate, not searching, but surrounding. Dominic's voice came faintly through the wall speaker. They're dressed in gray, no faces, just masks, military-grade armor, silent comms. They're not here to talk. A pause. One of them is scanning for thermal pockets. They'll find the false wall in a few minutes. Grace turned to Keanu. If they get the device, they won't, he said. Then what? She asked. Keanu looked at her, then at the ceiling. We're going up. He reached for a panel in the ceiling and pulled it open. Above was a narrow crawl space, originally built for electrical routing. Too small for most adults, but Keanu had always kept himself lean for a reason. He boosted Grace first, then the dog, who scrambled silently through like she'd done it before. Finally, Keanu followed, closing the hatch behind him. Below, through the slats of the ceiling, they watched the masked men enter the room. One of them scanned the walls. Another walked to the table and picked up the tablet Dominic had given Keanu hours earlier. He smashed it with the butt of his weapon. The third reached into his vest and pulled out something worse, a thin syringe filled with dark liquid. Grace gripped Keanu's arm. They're cleaners. If they find us, Keanu motioned her to move. They crawled for what felt like forever, dust in their throats, muscles aching. At the end of the crawl space was a vertical shaft with a rope ladder. Dominic's escape tunnel. It dropped into the forest slope outside. They climbed down silently. But when they reached the clearing beyond the trees, Dominic was already there. His shirt was torn, blood on his arm, but he was standing. They'll realize soon the room's empty, he said. Keanu stepped forward. How did you get out? Dominic smirked weakly. I built that cabin. You think I didn't leave myself a trap door? He pointed to a hill in the distance. We move fast. 20 minutes west. I have a vehicle buried, off-grid, shielded. It can take us to the desert. Keanu turned to Grace. Is the device ready? She nodded. But once it starts transmitting, they'll follow the signal. We'll have one shot to upload everything before they burn it all down. Keanu looked down at his dog. She was panting, tired but alert. She hadn't left his side once. As they began moving through the trees, he whispered to her, barely audible, No, more hiding. But a sudden crack echoed through the forest, not from a gun, from a drone wing slicing through the air above. A red dot flashed on Grace's back, and Keanu, without thinking, stepped between it and her. The drone fires, but before the impact lands, the dog launches herself in front of Keanu, taking the full hit. As Keanu drops to the ground holding her body, a faint beeping begins from the device in Grace's hand. It has activated, and it's broadcasting something none of them expected. What the dog gave, the sound didn't echo. It folded into the forest like it belonged there. Clean, precise, no drama, no scream. But the second it happened, time shifted. The crack of the drone's shot was almost drowned by the low whine of the signal that followed. The moment the dog threw herself forward, Keanu didn't see it coming. One moment she was at his side, breathing hard but steady. The next, she moved. No hesitation, no command, just instinct and love. The red dot on Grace's back never had a chance to settle. The drone fired in perfect line, but the dog caught the impact mid-air, as if her body had always known it was built for this. She didn't yelp, didn't cry out. She just dropped. Keanu was on the ground before she hit the earth, his arms wrapped around her body as it went limp, warmth fading fast beneath his hands. Her chest rose once, twice, then struggled. Grace stood frozen, her mouth trembling. Dominic shouted something, pulled them into cover, but Keanu couldn't hear him. Not yet. Because she was still looking at him, those eyes still locked on his face, even as her breathing slowed. Her body shook once. Her tail gave a soft, weak wag. Keanu leaned close, pressing his forehead to hers. "You did good," he whispered. "You saved her. You saved us." Her eyes blinked just once, then closed. And she was still. The dog, the one who sensed fear before it entered a room, who had stood by him through years of quiet storms, was gone. Keanu's hands didn't shake. He placed her gently beneath the roots of the nearest tree, covered her with his coat, and stood. He turned to the drone and stared straight into its lens. It hovered, uncertain. Then it spun once in place and shot off into the sky, leaving nothing but wind behind. But something else had already begun. The device in Grace's hand, jarred from her grasp when she dropped to her knees, was blinking rapidly. The signal that had been dormant for years, encrypted, hidden, unreachable, was now pulsing across frequencies in patterns no firewall could block. Dominic grabbed it. His fingers flew across its edges, connecting a small transmitter from his belt. "It's unlocked," he said breathlessly. "Your dog's body." The kinetic shock. It jolted the activation sensor. She opened it. Keanu took a slow breath. She always knew what mattered. Grace knelt beside them, her voice shaking. "It's broadcasting. Live. To every satellite channel we hooked into years ago. This is the full drop. Every file, every face, every operation. It's not just a list, it's evidence." The forest began to hum, not with sound, with response. Across the world, servers pinged. Phones lit up. Secure inboxes received massive incoming transmissions. Whistleblowers, journalists, government insiders, anyone who had once been silenced by fear now had the proof they needed: names, dates, operations. And in the middle of it all, a voice. It wasn't human. It was a synthesized playback from the device, collected from every recording Grace had hidden over the years. It repeated only one phrase: "They are watching. But so are we." Within hours, the world changed. 3 government departments launched full internal investigations. High-level resignations followed. Private contractors with ties to Oracle lost funding. And the woman in the black sedan. She vanished, but not without leaving a final message on a secure network. Dog got in the way this time. Next time, it'll be him. But that message came too late, because the internet had already claimed the story. People called her the Sentinel, Keanu's dog, whose sacrifice unlocked a secret so powerful it brought a hidden empire to its knees. Artists drew her face. Murals appeared overnight, A fund was created in her name to protect women and whistleblowers targeted by surveillance. And Keanu, he didn't disappear. He stood with Grace at a memorial in the center of the city weeks later, speaking publicly for the first time since the trial. He wore no suit, just a simple gray jacket. His voice was quiet, but steady. She didn't bark at the danger. She walked into it. For someone else, without fear. Not because she was trained to, but because she trusted. A pause. And that's what breaks their systems in the end. Trust. Love. The kind that can't be tracked or controlled. As he stepped down, Grace placed a small stone at the base of the memorial. On it was carved a single paw print. No name. Just that. Later that night, Keanu sat alone in his garden. The stars were sharp, the air still. Then came a sound. Faint, gentle. The breeze passed through the wind chimes above his porch, and just for a moment, he could swear he heard a soft bark in the distance. Not loud, not desperate. Just a hello from the other side of the silence, the kind only a dog who never really left could make.